the Brotherhood of the Unlit Lamps. Long before esoteric orders wore robes, long before priesthoods claimed divine authority, and millennia before medieval secret societies whispered their passwords in candlelit halls, there existed a lineage whose greatest power came not from chance, artifacts, or spectacle, but from silence. They left few traces, because silence rarely fossilizes. They left no inscriptions, because their knowledge lived between breaths. They kept no icons, because icons invited interpretation. What little we know of them survives only in negative space, in the absence of fire, in rooms without illumination, in the vanished glow of lamps they refused to light. They are known to archaeologists only through inference, to storytellers only through rumor, to fringe theorists only through shadow. We call them today the Brotherhood of the Unlit Lamps, but they never called themselves anything at all. Where silence begins, in several early settlements from the high mounds of northern Mesopotamia to the reed house villages of the upper Tigris, archaeologists discovered rooms that break every pattern of daily life. Rooms with no hearth, no central platform, no pigment stains, no tools, no cooking debris, no lamps, no lamp soot, no wall scorch, no animal bones, no floor plaster renewed over generations. Just emptiness, stillness, a kind of architectural breath hold. In some settlements, these rooms appear in clusters. In others, a single silent chamber exists, where everything else bustles with life. Mainstream scholars cautiously call them ritual abstention rooms, spaces purposely kept inactive. Fringe theorists argue they belong to a specialist tradition whose rites required sensory deprivation. Scholars still debate. Imagine entering such a chamber thousands of years ago. You step through a narrow doorway into cool darkness. The air feels different, untouched, unused. Your eyes strain. There is no central fire pit, no furniture, only clay walls smoothed so carefully that no light will catch them. A room built not for seeing, but for being unseen. A place where knowledge grows louder when everything else becomes silent. The rule of the unlit lamp. Among early households across the region, lamps are ubiquitous, simple stone or clay vessels filled with fat or oil, with char marks from wicks, burned night after night. Their sooty fingerprints dot nearly every excavated room, except these. These silent chambers show no trace of flame, not a single scorch, not one grain of soot embedded in plaster, not even the microscopic residue that typically clings to ceilings after years of domestic fire. This absence is deliberate. Imagine a circle of initiates sitting in absolute darkness, not because they lacked light, but because light was forbidden. In their worldview, illumination may have belonged to ritual specialists, to magician kings, to horizon watchers. Light revealed power. Light revealed secrets. But to this brotherhood, knowledge came not from what is seen, but from what is not. Their unlit lamps, found in a few rare contexts, speak volumes. These lamps are perfectly clean, unused, unbroken, placed in alcoves or niches, positioned as if ready, yet forbidden. A lamp you are not allowed to light becomes a symbol. Knowledge you must never reveal. The origins of the Brotherhood. Where did the Brotherhood emerge from? Three possibilities arise from archaeological and anthropological clues. 1. A reaction against the magician kings. As earlier sections described, performative rulers used spectacle to gain power. Those who valued inner knowledge may have rejected this theatricality. Thus, a silent counter-tradition is born. 2. An offshoot of Horizon Watchers. Horizon Watchers observed the cosmos in silence. They needed darkness to see stars clearly. Perhaps a splinter group elevated silence into doctrine. 3. A gathering of ritual abstainers. In many cultures, certain rites require fasting not only of food, but of sound, light, speech. These abstainers may have formed a dedicated order. Scholars still debate which origin is most plausible. The practice of darkness. Evidence for sensory deprivation rituals exists across the ancient world. though often in later context. Caves used for vision quests. Dark, inner sanctuaries in temples. Initiation pits designed to disorient. Hidden chambers in Egyptian tomb complexes. Underground rooms beneath Minoan palaces. Yet the earliest roots may lie here, among the unlit lamps. Imagine a young initiate entering a silent chamber for the first time. They sit, waiting. Hours pass, the mind wanders. Darkness becomes a canvas. Sounds grow sharper, thoughts swell. Eventually, the boundaries between inner and outer dissolve. In this vulnerability, elders observe them not through words, but through patience. Knowledge is not taught, it emerges. The Brotherhood prized this moment, when the initiate's breath slows, when their fear ebbs, when the darkness becomes a companion instead of an oppressor. Silence as transformation, darkness as teacher. The architecture of quiet. These chambers share unique architectural features. Thick walls to dampen sound. Low ceilings, creating intimacy. Single narrow entrances, restricting light. Floor pits too shallow for fire, perhaps for sitting or kneeling. Smooth plaster to avoid reflective glints. Absence of windows. One chamber found at a northern site seemed intentionally buried beneath higher floors, with only a small crawl space leading inside. The air inside was cool, stale, still perfect for sensory withdrawal. Another chamber contained a single object, a stone with a polished indentation, as if hundreds of hands had rested upon it. What gesture does a silent order make? A touch, a breath, a presence. The doctrine without words. The most paradoxical aspect of this brotherhood is that they preserved knowledge by not speaking it. The doctrine was experiential. You do not hear it. You undergo it. You become it. This aligns with traditions found later in mystery cults, where initiates swear oaths of silence, not because the rites are complex, but because they are simple. A moment of profound stillness cannot be explained, only repeated. Imagine an elder placing a hand on an initiate's shoulder in total darkness, no words, no chant, no instruction, only existence shared. Mainstream scholars struggle to interpret such spaces because silence leaves no artifact. Fringe theorists argue these chambers transmit void knowledge, a concept found in many ancient esoteric traditions. Scholars still debate whether this constitutes a coherent ritual system. The symbolism of the unlit lamp. The lamp becomes the central metaphor. A lamp represents potential, insight, revelation, illumination. But an unlit lamp represents restraint, secrecy, humility, the refusal to display power, the containment of knowledge within oneself. In burying unused lamps beneath floors or walls, the Brotherhood may have enacted a philosophy. Light belongs to the world, but not every light must be shown. Some unlit lamps were found with their wicks intact, yet pristine, never burned. This suggests ritual intent, not poverty or neglect. The silent procession. Some settlements show narrow pathways leading to these silent rooms, routes too constrained for crowds. These may have been used for silent processions, where initiates walked in single file, heads bowed, hands touching the wall to navigate darkness. In one site, heel marks on a smooth clay floor show repeated slow walking in circles, an intriguing parallel to circular symbol traditions described earlier. A silent, circular walk may have served as meditation, purification, or preparation. Imagine dozens of bare feet moving softly in a circle, night after night, no sound except breath. A procession not of spectacle, but of surrender. The paradox of their influence. Though they spoke little, the Brotherhood influenced emerging cultures profoundly. They shaped the earliest inner chambers of later temples. They contributed to the rise of initiation rites. Their emphasis on secrecy influenced later priesthoods. Their methods of silent contemplation appear in later spiritual traditions. Their sensory withdrawal techniques echo in later meditation practices. Their architectural motifs prefigure the crypts, sanctums, and oracles of antiquity. And yet, no culture claimed them, no myth names them, no text records them. Their influence is a shadow cast across millennia. Where their trail ends, eventually, as ceremonial architecture expanded and elites gained power, the Brotherhood's silent chambers were overshadowed by more theatrical rites. Cities demanded spectacle, not silence. Priests needed audiences, not introspection. The Brotherhood faded. Their rooms fell dormant. Their lamps remained unlit. But the tradition did not disappear entirely. It traveled underground into caves, hidden chambers, and distant mountains. There, silence survived where cities forgot. And now, from this brotherhood of quiet power, we step toward a very different tradition, one born not in silence, but in storms. The storm, readers, those who interpreted thunder and lightning as messages from the unseen. Ahead lies the world where the sky itself became a manuscript. The storm readers. Before scripture carved commandments into stone, before sky gods sat upon thrones in temples, and long before prophets claimed lightning as divine signatures, there existed a lineage who watched the heavens with a different eye. They were neither astronomers nor priests, neither warriors nor farmers. They were the storm readers, those who believed the sky itself was a living language and thunder its grammar. To later cultures, storms were the tools of gods. To these early readers, storms were messages, patterns, warnings, and opportunities. Their world was not governed by scripture but weather, and from the earliest settlements of the Fertile Crescent to the high plateaus of Anatolia, their traces remain, faint yet unmistakable. Where the storm readers first appeared, in several Neolithic sites, particularly those in storm-heavy regions near the Taurus foothills, archaeologists discovered unusual architectural features: houses with reinforced roofs, small openings in walls aligned to storm winds, drainage channels leading into ritual pits, symbols of zigzag lines, swirling arcs, and horn-like shapes. Some interpret these as purely practical storm adaptations. Others see ritual intent. Mainstream scholars admit the symbolism is complex and repetitive. Fringe theorists claim these patterns represent sky script, a mnemonic code for interpreting storms. Scholars still debate. Imagine a group gathered on a low rooftop at dusk. Clouds churn over distant mountains. A young apprentice watches the horizon as an elder whispers, "Wait for the second flash, then listen." A moment passes, then lightning streaks. Thunder follows. The elder nods solemnly. The reading begins. The storm as manuscript. To the storm readers, every storm contained signals in lightning, warnings in wind shifts, omens in thunder timing, messages in rainfall patterns, luck in the first drop to hit the ground, prophecy in hailstone size and direction. The storm was not random, it was structured, a text written in motion. Later civilizations, Babylonian, Hittite, Greek, Chinese, kept storm omens on clay tablets, noting thunder on the left or right, lightning from north or south. But the roots of such omen science may lie in these earlier watchers who lacked writing but preserved the knowledge orally. Imagine an initiate lying face down on packed earth, listening to thunder through the ground, feeling the vibration, interpreting its distance, tone, and sequence. Storm reading was not just visual, it was sensory and somatic. The first thunder rooms. Archaeologists have found chambers with unusual acoustics, rooms where thunder echoes strangely, even when distant. These rooms have curved plaster walls, recessed niches, low ceilings, clay benches, plaster surfaces smoothed to reflect sound. One such room, excavated near the Tigris, intensified thunder so dramatically that researchers initially believed it to be an early music chamber. Later analysis showed its acoustics amplify low-frequency sounds typical of distant storms. To the storm readers, such a room was sacred, a place to receive the sky's voice. Imagine kneeling there as thunder rolls overhead. The room vibrates, dust trickles from the walls, the air seems to pulse, The effect is profound, terrifying, enlightening. A message from the above. Lightning interpreted as pattern. Lightning held special significance. Vertical bolts meant affirmation. Branching forks meant conflict. Horizontal flashes meant distant change. Lightning without thunder meant spirits passing. Thunder without lightning meant ancestral warning. One bone plaque found in a ritual pit shows branching zigzags with small dots at intervals, a possible attempt to record lightning sequences. Mainstream interpretations label it artwork. Fringe theorists see proto-notation. Scholars still debate. What is known, similar motifs appear across a vast region from the Zagros to central Anatolia. The pattern was shared widely, suggesting a common symbolic language. The apprenticeship of thunder. Unlike the Brotherhood of the Unlit Lamps, whose training relied on silence, storm readers trained through sensory overload. An apprentice might be taken to a hilltop during a storm, a dangerous initiation. There, the elder teaches how to breathe steadily when lightning approaches, how to count thunder intervals, how to read wind directions, how to interpret sudden stillness, how to understand the voice of a storm. This training was not merely scientific, it was spiritual. Fear of storms becomes awe. Awe becomes comprehension. Comprehension becomes authority. By adulthood, a storm reader could predict rainfall, warn of flash floods, foresee drought, time, seasonal migrations, bless journeys based on wind patterns. Knowledge becomes prophecy. Storm readers as protectors. In communities vulnerable to storms, these specialists were invaluable. They predicted seasonal deluges that could destroy grain stores. They warned when rivers would swell. They guided when to plant. Their readings shaped survival. But their knowledge also carried mystique. To a community that feared thunder as an ancestral roar, the storm reader's calmness in storms signified otherworldly connection. Storm readers became ritual figures, half scientist, half mystic. Some settlements buried their storm specialists with unusual care. Bodies placed facing the sky, zigzag patterns painted on skulls, stone tools arranged like lightning forks, feathers of storm birds placed in the grave. Such burials suggest honor or fear or both. Storm masks and the dance of thunder. In one site near the Euphrates, archaeologists discovered clay masks with exaggerated features, wide mouths, flared brows, horn-like extensions. These were not everyday items. The pigment around the eyes shows they were worn in rituals, likely tied to storms. Imagine a storm ritual. As thunder approaches, masked practitioners dance in circles, imitating lightning with raised arms. The storm reader stands at the center, holding a polished stone disc that reflects flashes in fleeting bursts. The crowd gasps as the dance crescendos with the storm itself. This is theater. This is spirituality. This is proto-science, a union of all three. The first lightning rods, maybe. A provocative theory suggests some early settlements planted tall wooden poles tipped with animal bones or metal shards to attract or divert lightning. Evidence from several sites shows poles of unusual height, placed near ritual areas, topped with conductive or symbolic materials. Mainstream scholars are cautious, there's no proof these were lightning rods. Fringe theorists suggest early attempts to invite lightning for ritual. Scholars still debate. If true, then storm readers were among the first to manipulate natural forces. Imagine the fear and awe as lightning strikes such a pole, igniting a controlled flame. To the community, the storm reader has called down fire. A trick? A coincidence? An ancient precursor to controlled electricity? We may never know. The Storm Codex. Though no physical manuscript survives, oral traditions contained patterns, storm rules, guidelines, and chants. Among them, the first rumble rule. If thunder rumbles before rain, the storm is weak. The split flash rule. A branching bolt means conflict among spirits. The east wind rule. Winds from the east during a storm signal a shift of seasons. The two shadow rule. Lightning that casts two shadows is a powerful omen. Such rules appear in later omen texts from Mesopotamia, though in far more elaborate form. The storm readers may have been their ancestors. Storms as portents of change. In times of crisis, famine, migration, internal dispute, the community sought answers in storms. A sudden lightning strike could be interpreted as blessing, warning, confirmation, judgment. A thunderless flash might be seen as the spirits withholding approval. A storm that shifts direction mid-downpour could mean fate itself is turning. Storm readers were not just interpreters, they were arbiters of destiny. Why? Their tradition faded. As cities grew and temple complexes rose, more formal priesthoods replaced storm readers. Their intuitive, naturalistic knowledge was absorbed into state-sponsored rituals. Storm omens became codified in tablets. Lightning became the weapon of gods, not spirits of weather. Yet traces survive, in zigzag symbols on pottery, in sky deity myths, in thunder gods of later cultures, in rituals calling rain, in sacred hilltops still visited by pilgrims, in the fear and reverence storms command even today. The storm readers vanished, but the sky they read remains. And now, from those who interpreted the heavens, we move to those who understood the earth, not through storms or silence, but through bones. Ahead lies the bone speakers, a lineage whose rituals bridged life, death, and the secrets hidden within the human form. The bone speakers. Before temples guarded the dead, before priests performed burial rites, and long before necromancy became the stuff of myths and accusations, there existed a lineage for whom the human body, especially its silent, enduring framework, was not merely a vessel of life, but a repository of secrets. They were the bone speakers, ritual specialists who believed that bones were more than remains. Bones were memory. Bones were maps. Bones were bridges. To later cultures, bones became relics, symbols of mortality, or tools for divination. To the bone speakers, bones were alive in a way the living could barely understand. Their rituals were neither morbid nor macabre to their own people, they were essential, but to others they appeared strange, even dangerous. And so, like so many ancient lineages, their knowledge faded into rumor, preserved only in the faint imprints of ritual chambers and burial practices across the early Neolithic world, where bone speakers emerged. Burials in the Near East, Anatolia, and the Zagros, around 8,000–6,000 BCE, show patterns distinct from simple interment. In particular, repeated handling of bones long after burial, skulls removed, plastered, or painted, long bones arranged in patterns, joints separated and placed deliberately, secondary burials of selectively chosen remains, pits containing bones from multiple individuals, bone sets associated with pigments, figurines, and tools. Mainstream scholars view these as ancestor veneration practices. Fringe theorists argue they reflect a ritual class, the bone speakers, tasked with communicating with ancestral forces through bones. Scholars still debate. Imagine a chamber beneath a house. The living sleep above. Beneath their feet rests a room containing skulls, arranged in a semicircle. Each skull is painted, red lines, white plaster, black dots. In the center lies a low bench, on which sits an elder, whispering softly, reciting stories, naming ancestors, interpreting dreams. The chamber vibrates with memory. This is not death. This is continuity. The doctrine of the bones. The bone speakers believed. Bones hold the essence of a person's experience. Flesh rots, memory remains. Skulls store identity. The face in death becomes the face of the ancestors. Long bones hold movement. They contain the journeys a person walked. Joints symbolize connections. Disarticulating them reveals or alters relationships. Bone dust carries spiritual potency. When mixed with pigment, it marks transformation. This philosophy aligns with later practices found across the globe: Tibetan sky burials, Melanesian ancestor skulls, Andean bone cults, suggesting a global intuition. Bones are not dead, they are archives. The skull rooms. At sites like Jericho, Çatalhöyük, Tel Aswad, and Kuşkoyuk, archaeologists discovered rooms containing plastered skulls, human crania coated in plaster, molded into lifelike faces, with shells inserted as eyes. Mainstream interpretation. Ancestor portraits. Fringe theory. Ritual communication tools used by bone speakers. Scholars still debate. What is clear? These skulls were not simply buried. They were curated, displayed, touched, even repainted over generations. Imagine an elder lifting a plastered skull from a niche. They hold it gently, speaking into its hollow cavity. The skull echoes, faintly amplifying their whisper. An initiate watches, terrified yet fascinated. The elder tilts the skull forward, and its shell eyes catch the dim light. A lesson begins. Identity flows through bone. Listening to bones. The title, Bone Speaker, is not metaphorical. These specialists believed bones could be heard not through sound, but through resonance. Archaeological evidence suggests skulls used as resonating chambers, long bones tapped or rubbed to produce tones, rib bones assembled into sound-making tools, jaw bones used as rattles. In one Neolithic shrine, a human femur polished, smooth from repeated handling was found near a hollowed stone that amplifies sound. Such combinations hint at ritual acoustics involving bones. Imagine a ceremony. The bone speaker taps a tibia with a pebble. A soft, hollow tone rings through the chamber. Each tone corresponds to a story, a memory, a lineage. To initiates, this sound is a voice ancestral, instructive, alive. The art of disarticulation. Bone speakers performed complex body processing rituals. Primary burial. The body buried whole, allowed to decompose. Exhumation. After months or years, bones retrieved. Selection. Some bones kept, others reburied. Cleansing and painting. Bones washed, painted, plastered. Arrangement. Bones placed in intentional patterns, circles, spirals, lines. Secondary burial or display. Certain bones kept in ritual rooms, others returned to the earth. These patterns appear across many early sites. Scholars still debate their meaning. To bone speakers, disarticulation was not desecration, it was interpretation. A body is a constellation. Disassembling it reveals its underlying map. Pigments and bone dust. Pigments, especially red ochre, appear frequently in bone contexts, but some deposits contain bone ash mixed with pigment, forming a grayish-red powder. This mixture may have been used ceremonially to mark initiates, trace patterns on chamber floors, paint symbols on walls, coat figurines associated with ancestors, bless new constructions. Fragments of such pigment mixtures have been found in several Neolithic houses, suggesting that bone-derived pigment was considered potent, perhaps dangerous, and certainly sacred. Imagine an elder dipping fingers into bone ochre mixture and marking an initiate's forehead with a circle. The initiate trembles. They know the circle contains the memory of the dead. A blessing? A burden? Both. Bones as tools of divination. In some ritual pits, archaeologists discovered bones arranged in grids or patterns, suggesting intentional placement for divination. Animal scapulae, shoulder blades, show scorch marks similar to later forms of scapulomancy, divination by bone cracks. Human bones appear in similar contexts. A bone speaker could read cracks in heated bones, interpret fractures from burial pressure, sense messages in discolored marrow, observe alignment of bones in deposit pits, interpret sounds from tapped bones. Such practices foreshadow later divination systems across China, Siberia, and the Mediterranean. Bone libraries. Some settlements had bone repositories, rooms filled with carefully stacked long bones, sorted by type. These were not mass graves, they were curated collections. Why? Possible explanations. Ancestor archives. Each bone belonging to a known individual. Ritual toolkits. Bones used for ceremonies. Knowledge storage. Bones representing wisdom passed from generation to generation. Social memory. A lineage's history encoded through bones. These repositories often appear beneath floors, hidden but central. Imagine lifting a floorboard and finding dozens of femurs, tibias, ribs, not shoved, randomly arranged, each one an unspoken biography. Opposition and fear. Not everyone embraced the bone speakers. Evidence suggests some bones were buried hastily to avoid their rituals. Later, construction sealed off bone rooms. Newer elites favored stone idols instead. Plastered skulls were hidden when belief systems changed. Fear of bone rites appears in later myths, warnings about necromancers, spirits of the dead, or forbidden ancestor magic. These fears likely began here, as communities shifted away from intimate contact with the deceased. The fading of the bone speakers. As agricultural societies stabilized, new forms of ritual arose: temple cults, sun worship, idol veneration. Bone rites declined. Their end was not violent, it was quiet. Bones left uncollected, skull rooms repurposed, repositories sealed, rites forgotten, elders replaced. But echoes survive, in ancestor cults, in skull shrines, in funerary masks, in divination bones, in myths of necromancers, in the idea that the dead still speak. The bone speakers vanished into the silence of time, but the bones they tended still lie beneath many ancient floors. And now, from those who listened to the dead, we move toward those who manipulated the living, the keepers of the Garden of False Dawn, a ritual complex designed not to reveal truth, but to craft illusion. Ahead lies the story of a place where architecture was used to deceive the senses and guide the soul through orchestrated revelation. The Garden of False Dawn. There were places in the ancient world where every stone, every path, every shadow had been arranged with precision, not to align with stars, not to honor ancestors, and not to store grain or protect families. These places were built for an entirely different purpose: to deceive the senses. Among early ritual complexes scattered from eastern Anatolia to northern Mesopotamia, archaeologists encounter sites that defy ordinary interpretation. They contain walls that create false horizons, pathways that curve subtly to disorient, sunlit chambers that never see the real sun, artificial mounds that redirect shadows, plantings of reeds and shrubs long since vanished, pigments that mimic dawn light in total darkness. They are not gardens in the modern sense. They are crafted illusions, ritual landscapes designed to manipulate perception. In these spaces, initiates underwent a journey through false dawn, experiencing light, sound, and space in ways carefully engineered to reshape the mind. This is the Garden of False Dawn, one of the earliest examples of sensory architecture. The first clues. At several Neolithic sites, especially those near limestone ridges and natural terraces, excavators discovered narrow courtyards bordered by low walls that create the illusion of sunrise inside spaces where real sunlight could never reach. These courtyards often contain polished stones reflecting faint glow, plastered surfaces that brighten under torchlight, pigments mimicking early morning hues, pathways rising slightly, like the slope toward a hilltop, alcoves placed to catch artificial light exactly at dawn. Mainstream scholars see these as ritual spaces for early morning rites. Fringe theorists believe they were constructed illusions, simulating sunrise for initiates deprived of real morning light. Scholars still debate. Imagine standing in such a courtyard well before sunrise. Elders guide you through a twisting passage into a confined space. Then, as torches ignite hidden pigments, a soft glow washes over the plaster walls, imitating dawn so effectively that your heart believes the world has begun anew. A false dawn. A new beginning, engineered by human hands. Artificial horizons. One of the most defining features of these complexes is the presence of false horizons, long, low walls built at eye level, positioned to block the real horizon and present an artificial one. When the initiate kneels or stands in the designated position, the sky appears to shift. The wall becomes the new boundary of the world. In one site near the Euphrates, a carefully constructed mound created a false hill. At its crest stood a stone slab angled toward the east, despite the real sunrise being obstructed by terrain. When torches were lit behind the slab, it glowed like a backlit disc. Was it a proto-sun symbol? A teaching tool? A psychological trial? Scholars still debate. But one thing is certain, the builders understood how to manipulate perspective. Light that lies. To create a false dawn, ritual architects used polished limestone, mica-rich plaster, reflective pigments, shallow pools of water, obsidian flakes embedded into walls, narrow slits that admitted a single beam of light. One chamber discovered at a terrace site contained a polished basin filled with water. When torches were extinguished, hidden lamps ignited behind a screened partition. Their light hit the basin and reflected upward, illuminating the ceiling with a soft, shimmering glow. The effect, a gentle sky brightening, not bright enough to mimic full sun, but enough to evoke the emotional response of dawn. Imagine the initiate witnessing this moment after hours in darkness. The relief, awe, disorientation, all purposeful. The builders were not just architects. They were psychologists thousands of years before the word existed. Sound as illusion. The garden did not rely solely on sight. It used sound to enhance deception. Narrow corridors that compress footsteps into whispers. Rounded walls producing soft echo. Hidden cavities amplifying distant thunder. Reed mats rustling as wind passes through vents. Dripping water echoing like far-off rain. One structure contained hollow clay tubes embedded in walls, producing flute-like tones when wind blew through them. The result was an eerie, directionless hum, stimulating the mind's search for meaning. Imagine walking through a passage where the sound seems to come from behind you, then beside you, then above. The initiate cannot trust their senses. This disorientation is intentional. It prepares them for revelation, plantings that no longer exist. Though plants rarely survive millennia, soil samples and pollen residues indicate the presence of aromatic shrubs, tall reeds, flowering plants that reflect early morning light, moss-lined channels, fragrant herbs used for sensory effect. When arranged in clusters, these plants altered acoustics and scent. A slight breeze could release fragrance that signaled a specific stage of the ritual. Imagine reeds swaying softly in torchlight, casting shadows that resemble elongated figures, ancestors, spirits, or guardians. Even nature became part of the illusion. A journey in stages. Most garden structures follow a consistent layout. 1. Entry passage, darkening. A low, narrow corridor forces silence and humility. Eyes adjust to darkness. 2. Confounding corridor, disorientation. Curved walls and misleading shadows unsettle the senses. Sound shifts unpredictably. 3. The pool of first reflection. A shallow basin of water reflects flickering light. The initiate sees distorted versions of themselves. 4. The mound path, aspiration. A slight upward slope mimics ascent toward a hilltop. Walls block peripheral vision, intensifying focus. 5. The chamber of false dawn, revelation. A simulated sunrise appears crafted by hidden lamps, pigments, and reflective surfaces. Emotion overwhelms reason. 6. The garden proper, integration. An open space illuminated softly where initiates breathe, reflect, and accept new identity. This sequence appears across multiple sites, suggesting a shared ritual narrative. What was the purpose? Theories abound. 1. Initiation rites. False dawn symbolizes ritual rebirth. The initiate becomes new. 2. Controlled enlightenment. A way to induce awe safely without waiting for real celestial events. 3. Spiritual deception. Spectacle used by elites to cement authority. 4. Psychological testing. Those who handle sensory manipulation are deemed ready for advanced roles. 5. Myth reenactment. A symbolic journey through darkness into the first light of creation. Mainstream scholars lean toward initiation. Fringe theorists see psychological manipulation. Scholars still debate. The people who built the garden, those who designed these structures knew optics, acoustics, human perception, environmental behavior, pigments and light reflection, controlled architecture, ritual sequencing. This implies a class of ritual engineers, architects of experience. Imagine an elder explaining to an apprentice, place the lamp here, angle the stone there. When the flame rises, their breath will catch. That is when their old self dies. These were not passive rituals. They were orchestrated transformations. Why simulate dawn? Dawn is universal. The end of danger, the return of visibility, warmth after cold, renewal after uncertainty, symbolism of birth, resetting of the world. Simulating dawn means simulating hope. Controlling dawn means controlling psychology. Thus, the garden became a school, a theater, a sanctum, a testing ground, a psychological crucible. To emerge from false dawn was to be remade. The garden's decline. As societies evolved, temples grew, calendars improved, priesthoods formalized, astronomical knowledge expanded, city ritual replaced intimate sensory rites. False dawns became obsolete. Real dawn, codified in architecture, returned to prominence. But the memory of artificial dawn persisted in sunrise rituals, temple orientations, solstice ceremonies, mythic rebirth narratives, mystery cult initiations. The garden faded, but its techniques reappeared in later esoteric traditions. When modern archaeologists uncover these spaces, they sense intention, but not its purpose. What remains are whispers of the ancient human desire to be transformed through carefully crafted illusion. And now, from gardens built to deceive light, we move to a lineage that shaped darkness itself. The void carvers, shapers of absence, sculptors of space, keepers of hollows where meaning grows not from presence, but from emptiness. Ahead lies the hollow that remembers you, the hollow that remembers you. Before monuments rose toward the heavens and before temples carved narratives into stone, there existed a lineage whose craft was neither sculpture nor architecture, at least not in the ordinary sense. They carved not images, but absence. They shaped not walls, but voids. Their art was the creation of spaces where nothing existed, and yet everything happened. These were the void carvers, the makers of chambers whose power depended not on what was inside them, but on what was missing. In a world overflowing with symbols, bones, pigments, masks, chants, the void carvers pursued the opposite truth. Meaning arises not from presence, but from emptiness. Their chambers, pits, hollows, and cavities appear across early settlements like forgotten breaths, unexpected gaps in otherwise crowded architecture. And though they left no inscriptions, their work endures in the hollows they shaped, each containing a quiet echo of the people who once stepped inside. This is the hollow that remembers you. The mystery of structured absence. Archaeologists excavating early Neolithic sites frequently encounter unusual voids. Perfectly smooth, bowl-shaped depressions carved into bedrock. Pits lined with plaster, yet completely empty. Niches built into walls with no contents. Hidden crawl spaces leading to nowhere. Sunken chambers sealed immediately after construction. Shallow basins beneath floors, untouched after creation. Mainstream scholars struggle to explain these voids. Fringe theorists call them memory chambers, designed to capture emotional or spiritual imprints. Scholars still debate, but the consistency is striking. These voids are deliberate, their shaping is meticulous, their emptiness is intentional. Imagine a chamber so smooth, it feels like polished bone. No tools inside, no offerings, no ash, no pigment, just a hollow space where echoes linger longer than they should. A space designed not for storing objects, but for altering consciousness. A void that remembers you, not through artifacts, but through experience. The first carved hollows. One of the earliest known examples appears beneath a settlement mound near the Tigris River. Excavators found a rounded cavity carved directly into the limestone beneath the floor of a house. It was large enough for one person to sit inside, back against the curved wall, knees drawn to the chest. The plaster lining showed fingerprints, hundreds of them smoothing the surface until it gleamed. No bones, no tools, no soot, no offerings, just a perfect, human-sized void. Imagine stepping into this hollow thousands of years ago. Your breath tightens, the chamber shapes your posture, darkness wraps around you, the air feels cool and ancient. Your heartbeat echoes faintly amplified by the oval curve of the space. This is not storage. This is ritual. A conversation between body and emptiness. Why emptiness? To understand the void carvers, one must accept an idea common in certain ancient philosophies, but rare in early archaeology. Emptiness is a medium. For the void carvers, emptiness was a purifier, a threshold, a reflective surface for the mind, a stabilizer of emotion, a place where the self dissolves, a container of absence where meaning accumulates, a womb for transformation, where bone speakers worked with ancestor remains and storm readers interpreted the sky. Void carvers crafted internal landscapes, spaces designed to reshape the psyche through deprivation. This aligns with later global traditions. Underground initiation chambers in Minoan Crete, empty sanctums in Egyptian temples, meditation caves in Central Asia, stone circles marking silent centers in Neolithic Europe, sacred pits used in shamanic retreats. But here, in these earliest hollows, we may see the origin of solitude as ritual. The architecture of absence. Void carver structures share unusual traits. 1. Perfect curvature. Many hollows exhibit near spherical or ovoid geometry, unlikely accidental in the Neolithic. 2. Smoothness. Surfaces are polished meticulously, sometimes to a soft shine. 3. Sound behavior. When tested, these hollows alter sound, dramatically softening, stretching, or transforming echoes. 4. Lightlessness. Openings are small or entirely absent. Darkness is absolute. 5. Thermal stability. Even in hot climates, these chambers remain cool, ideal for sensory withdrawal. 6. No use wear. No soot, no scraping marks, no tool impressions indicating non-domestic function. Scholars still debate whether these hollows served symbolic, psychological, or ritual purposes. The hollow as teacher. Imagine an initiate entering a void chamber as part of an early rite. The descent. They crawl through a narrow passage, feeling the world behind them shrink. The arrival. They lower themselves into the hollow, knees to chest, spine against curved wall. The silence. No light, no sound, only breath. The shift. Minutes stretch, breathing slows, fear rises then subsides. The mind expands into the space where the world once was. This psychological shift, fear, stillness, expansion, may have been the intended lesson. Knowledge without explanation, transformation without instruction, meaning born from nothingness. Imprints in clay. One of the strangest discoveries associated with void carvers comes from a site in eastern Anatolia. Archaeologists found a shallow pit lined with clay. Inside, faint impressions of hands pressed outward from the walls, as if someone inside the hollow pushed gently using fingertips and palms. Some impressions are from adults, others from adolescents. No objects were found, no fires lit, no pigments used, just hands. Hands pressing lightly into the clay, creating a tactile memory of presence inside emptiness. Is this a record of a rite? A moment of fear? A meditation exercise? A group initiation? Scholars still debate. Echo chambers, perhaps the most eerie structures, are the whispering hollows chambers, whose acoustics distort quiet sounds. A whisper becomes a hum becomes a low resonance, a heartbeat can seem thunderous. In one excavated site, standing inside the hollow causes one's voice to vibrate the walls subtly, so subtly that, over generations, the plaster developed microcracks resembling branching patterns. This sacred veining may have been interpreted as the hollow responding, speaking back. Imagine being told as an apprentice, "Speak, and the chamber will answer." You whisper. The chamber hums faintly. You believe the void remembers you. And in a way, it does. The use of emptiness in ritual. Void carver chambers appear in contexts associated with rebirth rituals, mourning rites, coming of age, ceremonies, solitary trials, death preparation, trance induction. One settlement even shows a pattern. Each house has a small private void beneath the floor like a personal sanctum. Over years, these are sealed and new ones dug in different shapes or sizes. This suggests a belief in cyclical identity renewal, each person maintaining a relationship with emptiness throughout life. The paradox of the hollow. A hollow is nothing, and yet its construction requires immense labor. This paradox mirrors the philosophy behind the void carvers. To know yourself, remove distractions. To hear truth, remove noise. To feel the world, remove sensation. To see clearly, remove light. Absence becomes teacher. Void becomes mentor. This philosophy reappears millennia later in monastic cells, meditation caves, oracle chambers, hermit traditions, ascetic rituals. But here is its beginning, the first places where emptiness was crafted intentionally. Why the tradition faded. As cities expanded and rituals moved toward spectacle, silence lost prestige. Temples needed priests, crowds, noise, fire, incense. Empty chambers became obsolete. Some were filled in, some repurposed for storage, some forgotten beneath new floors. But a few remained untouched, sealed like memories. When archaeologists uncovered these hollows, they found them pristine, as if the last person to sit inside left only hours earlier. No artifacts, no decay, just emptiness, waiting patiently. The hollow that remembers you. What makes these spaces extraordinary is that they feel alive. Walk into one today, though few remain open, and you feel pressure, weight, presence. Not because spirits linger, but because the human mind reacts to emptiness in profound ways. The void carvers understood this intuitively. They shaped absence to shape experience. Their legacy survives not through artifacts, but through the architecture of silence that later cultures rediscovered. Every meditation room, every sanctum, every quiet cave where seekers sit in darkness echoes with their ancient philosophy. And now, from hollows carved for introspection, we move toward a final lineage, those who harnessed illusion, silence, storms, bones, and geometry into a single, strange craft. The makers of masks that were worn not to reveal identity, but to erase it. Ahead lies the mask that wore you, the penultimate mystery in our long descent into ancient hidden knowledge. The mask that wore you. Long before masks became symbols of theater, protection, or ceremony, before Greek tragedy fixed their expressions into marble, before shamans painted faces to channel spirits, and before kings donned gold funerary masks to guarantee eternal presence, a stranger, older tradition flourished quietly across early settlements. In this world, a mask was not worn by a person. A mask wore the person. It was not an accessory, not a disguise, not a celebratory object. It was a tool that temporarily erased the self, replacing it with something older, something communal, something inherited. To put on such a mask was to step out of individuality and into a role larger than a single life. We call those who practice this the face eclipsers, or simply the makers of the mask that wore you. Where the face eclipsers first appeared, across early Neolithic sites from Anatolia to the Levant, archaeologists discovered masks that defy conventional interpretation. Clay masks with featureless faces, stone masks with exaggerated brows and hollow eyes, plaster masks molded onto skulls, then removed, figurines with removable ceramic faces, masks too small or too large to fit any human head. Mainstream scholars classify these as ritual objects. Fringe theorists insist they were used in possession rites. Scholars still debate, yet the pattern repeats. These masks do not simply fit a face, they alter one. Imagine a dimly lit ritual chamber. An elder holds a mask carved from pale stone. The surface is smooth, the expression blank, almost unsettlingly calm. The initiate kneels. The mask is lowered slowly, blocking vision, muting sound, narrowing breath. In that moment, the self dissolves. The mask becomes the wearer. Masks not meant for faces. Many ancient masks discovered from this era are too small for adult humans, some only covering the upper face, some covering only the mouth area, others no larger than a hand. They were often tied to the front of the head using cords or held in place by handlers. Why? Because the purpose was not concealment, it was transformation. The face eclipsers believed the face is the seat of identity. To change the face is to change the self. To hide the self allows ancestral or communal forces to act. The wearer becomes a vessel, not a person. This belief echoes later traditions. Sumerian gala priests wearing sacred cosmetics, Egyptian ka masks, Greek persona masks, Tibetan ceremonial visages, West African spirit masks. But here, in these early chambers, lies the beginning. Masks that controlled breathing. Several masks contain narrow nostril slits or enclosed cavities that reduce airflow. When worn, they produce shallow breathing, slight dizziness, heightened sensory awareness, auditory distortion, increased heartbeat. To the face eclipsers, these physiological effects signaled the beginning of transformation. Imagine breathing through a thin slit for several minutes, hearing your own heartbeat echo inside stone. Fear rises, then calmness, then a sense that someone or something else is present. Not all masks created visions, but all masked the self. The blank-faced ones. Featureless masks appear repeatedly in early contexts. Smooth ceramic ovals, stone masks with no mouth, plaster masks devoid of expression. The absence of features is intentional. A blank mask erases individuality, eliminates emotion, forces the initiate into symbolic rather than personal identity. These masks are often found in ritual pits with bone dust, pigments, broken figurines, delicate cords, objects associated with roles, lineage, or story. A blank mask does not hide a face, it removes it. The mask as ancestor. One of the most intriguing patterns involves plastered skulls found at various sites. Some skulls have facial reconstruction, but others have plaster masks that were removed after the plaster set, producing a mask identical to a person's face. Such masks were painted, were stored in wall niches, were reused in ceremonies, had eye holes added later, appear handled frequently. Mainstream interpretation, ancestor veneration, fringe view, the face. Eclipsers used these masks so initiates became the ancestor during rites. Scholars still debate. Imagine wearing a mask molded from a forebear's skull. The sense of identity is overwhelmed. Memory and lineage merge in a ritual moment. The living becomes the dead. The dead becomes the guide, a mask that wears you indeed. The ceremony of face lending. Ethnographic parallels suggest a likely practice. 1. The elder chooses a mask, not based on beauty, but on lineage or role. 2. The initiate kneels, symbolizing surrender of the personal face. 3. The mask descends, blocking sight, narrowing the world. 4. The role takes hold. The initiate recites stories, chants, or gestures, not as themselves, but as the character the mask represents. 5. The return. Removing the mask returns the initiate to their own identity changed, expanded, or humbled. Archaeology shows traces of this. Masks placed beside hearths, masks deposited with beads of status, masks in shrines with signs of repeated handling. A mask is a tool not of deception, but of transcendence. Masks too large to wear. Some masks discovered are enormous, far too big for human use, often made of stone, weighing several kilograms, and carved with stylized faces. These likely stood in place or were carried by multiple people. Why wear a mask when you can step beneath one? Such masks transformed not just a person, but a group ritual. The giant face representing a deity, participants passing beneath it to receive identity. Shadows cast by torchlight, animating the features. Chants echoing off the mask's hollow curves. Imagine ducking under a massive stone visage, feeling the shadow fall across your face, hearing the hum of chants reverberate through its carved mouth. For a moment, you are not yourself. The mask and the voice. Several masks have small openings positioned to distort sound. When worn or held close to the face, they make the wearer's voice deeper, echoing, trembling, muffled, otherworldly. This effect persists even in modern testing. The face eclipsers likely used this to speak as ancestors or spirits. The mask speaks through the wearer, not with the wearer's voice. The mask makes the person its instrument. Why masks were feared? Evidence indicates that not all community members approved of face eclipser practices. Some masks were deliberately broken, buried face down, hidden behind walls, burned before burial. There may have been fear that a mask could trap identity. A mask could impose a role upon someone unwilling. A mask represented suppressed spirits. Masks belong to rival cults or lineages. The power of masks is double-edged. Transformation can liberate, but also consume. Mask rooms. At a few sites, archaeologists found entire rooms dedicated to mask making. Shelves lined with plaster fragments, pigment bowls, half-molded face forms, bone tools for smoothing or carving, soot traces from heating materials, discarded masks with testing marks. These rooms indicate a specialized craft knowledge passed through apprenticeship. A master face eclipser shaping a mask is shaping a future identity. Imagine the workshop glowing in firelight as a mask dries, a blank expression emerging slowly from clay, silence as the elder turns it, studying each curve, a new self being born. The mask that wore you. The phrase comes from an oral tradition recorded millennia later in a culture far removed from these early sites. It describes a mask that takes your face, meaning the mask imposes its role. The wearer becomes a vessel, the self becomes secondary. Identity flows into and out of the mask. This concept aligns eerily with the archaeological evidence, masks that change breath, voice, posture, sight, and presence, not adornment. Transformation. The end of the face eclipsers. As societies grew more stratified, rituals became codified. Masks shifted from tools of identity erasure to symbols of hierarchy. Kings and priests wore masks of power, not masks of emptiness. The original purpose dissolving the self faded, but echoes remain. Theatrical masks, shamanic face coverings, initiation masks, funerary masks, festival personas, deity visages. Whenever a mask changes the wearer, the face eclipses philosophy flickers back to life. And now, we turn toward the final veil, the last secret in our long exploration, the threshold between identity and oblivion, the ritual door that moves not forward but backward, revealing truths hidden beneath every previous section. Ahead lies the door that opens backward, where every tradition we've explored converges. The door that opens backward. Across the ancient world, in ruins scattered from the upper Tigris to the Levantine coast, archaeologists have noted a strange architectural anomaly: doors that cannot be opened forward. Thresholds framed for one direction only, stone lintels angled so that the door, if one existed, would swing inward, not outward. Narrow passageways whose geometry insists that entry is not a simple movement into a new space, but a return. This pattern appears in settlement after settlement, separated by hundreds of kilometers and thousands of years. A door that opens backward becomes a symbol, one that hints at a deeper ritual truth. A truth echoed by the bone speakers, the void carvers, the storm readers, the magician kings, the face eclipsers, and all the hidden lineages we've traced through these last many hours. The final secret. Transformation does not move forward. It moves back. Back into memory. Back into silence. Back into origins. Back into the self you were before you knew a name. This is the door that opens backward, the last great mystery of the ancient occult world. The first backward door. One of the earliest examples comes from a site near Lake Van, where a small subterranean chamber was discovered beneath the floor of a communal building. The entrance was a tight oval opening framed with clay and stone. On one side, a pivot socket carved into the floor suggested a door had once been fastened there. But the pivot and scuff marks indicate something strange. The door had opened inward, into the chamber, not outward into the main room. Why design it this way? Because the initiate must retreat into the chamber. The act of entering is an act of returning. Crossing the threshold symbolically reverses time. Mainstream scholars interpret this as practical, perhaps a storage chamber. Fringe theorists argue it was an initiation site where one enters the womb of the earth. Scholars still debate, yet the symbolism persists across centuries. A door you cannot push open. At another site, a plastered chamber was discovered with a peculiar feature. The passage into it was too narrow for a door to swing outward. It could only swing inward. But inside the chamber, there was no room for such a door to fully open, meaning the door could never have been opened from the outside at all. The initiate crawled in. The door closed behind them. They remained in darkness until someone else decided they were ready to leave. A frightening thought. But to these early peoples, fear was not something to avoid, it was something to master. Imagine crawling inside such a chamber. You hear the door scrape shut behind you. Darkness engulfs you. Your breath echoes off the curved walls. You reach out, touching plaster that feels cold, smoother than bone. Time begins to dissolve. The only way out is the way back, the door you cannot open. This is not imprisonment. It is surrender. The philosophy of the backward door. The door that opens backward is not merely physical. It is symbolic of a deeper philosophy. Forward is the world of appearances. Backward is the world of origins. Forward is identity. Backward is essence. Forward is noise. Backward is truth. The ancient adepts believed, to find wisdom, one must unlearn. To find clarity, one must return. To find the self, one must step backward through memory. This philosophy echoes the void carver's emphasis on emptiness, the unlit lamp's embrace of silence, and the bone speaker's reverence for origins. Everything leads back. Always back. The door as threshold ritual. In many sites, backward opening doors are associated with peculiar architectural features. Recessed steps leading downward. Narrow passages designed for crawling. Walls painted only on the interior side. Smoke stains in unexpected areas. Pigment traces near thresholds. Symbols of spirals painted around entrances. Deposits of ash, bone, and feathers beneath door frames. These elements suggest ritual movement, not daily usage. Imagine a ceremony. The initiate approaches the door. They place their hand on the frame, their shoulders lower, breath steadies. They step backward. A gesture of humility, a return to origins. They enter the chamber, kneeling, then crawling, then sinking into darkness. The door closes behind, not locking but completing the symbolic movement. The return. The initiate emerges through the same door, but now forward. Forward symbolizes rebirth. The door itself is the rite. Backwards writing, backwards footprints. At certain ritual sites, symbols were painted backward. Spirals, turning counterclockwise. Animal tracks painted in reverse. Zigzags inverted. Handprints oriented downward rather than upward. One plaster floor contains footprints, pressed intentionally heel first, as if people walked backward into the chamber. Such clues reinforce the idea that backward movement carried sacred significance. Return to ancestors. Return to childhood. Return to silence. Return to the womb. Return to origins of the cosmos. The door that opens backward becomes a map of myth. The door and the mask. In one haunting site, a backward opening door led into a chamber filled with masks not worn on faces, but hung on the wall facing inward. Their empty eyes stared at the threshold, their carved mouths silent. To enter the chamber was to be watched by forgotten identities. To leave was to choose your own. Masks wear the person, but only if the person steps backward into the role. The door and the hollow. Void carver chambers also exhibit backward entrances. A void must be approached humbly backward, retreating from the world. This aligns perfectly with sensory deprivation, psychological transformation, symbolic rebirth, dissolution of ego, entering the primordial state. To enter a hollow is to reverse your life. To emerge is to begin again. The door and the dead. Many secondary burial pits contain bones placed facing backward, skulls oriented toward the entrance, long bones angled as if pointing behind. In some cases, skulls are positioned directly in front of the backward opening door, as if guarding it. This suggests the door is a boundary between worlds. The dead dwell behind the living. Initiation involves crossing between the two. To move backward is to approach ancestors. To move forward is to rejoin the living. The bone speakers understood this intimately. Why the door opens backward. The deeper meaning becomes clear. To transform, you must move against the direction of your life. You cannot walk forward into mystery. You must retreat into it. Just as the storm readers listened to what others feared, the magician kings wielded illusion to reveal truth. The unlit lamps embraced darkness to see inward. The void carvers shaped emptiness. The face eclipsers dissolved identity. The bone speakers honored what remains after life. The backward door teaches the final lesson. The path to wisdom is never ahead of you. It's behind you, hidden in the place you forgot to look. The last ritual, the final return. In the final stage of initiation, the initiate steps backward through the door one last time, symbolizing a return to origins so complete that they emerge transformed permanently. Some archaeologists believe backward doors were sealed after this final rite, turning the chamber into a permanent memory, an echo of the people who passed through it. Sealed doors become tombs of identity, monuments to transformation, echoes of lives changed forever. To seal a backward opening door is to freeze a transformation in time. The door in myth. Long after these chambers fell into ruin, the symbolism survived. Mythic gates that open only to the worthy. Labyrinths exited backward. Dream journeys that begin in darkness. Rituals of rebirth. Stories of descending and reascending. Gods who revisit origins to gain power. Heroes who must return to the beginning before triumph. These myths are not coincidences. They are cultural memory of the backward door. The final secret. The door that opens backward is not merely an artifact. It is a worldview whispering, "You are not transformed by becoming someone new. You are transformed by remembering who you were before the world told you who to be." The backward opening door invites you to step into the oldest chamber, the earliest silence, the first breath, the dark hollow beneath all things, the womb of humanity's forgotten wisdom. And so, our journey ends not by moving forward, but by returning through storms and bones, masks and hollows, false dawns and silent rooms, into the deep memory of our species, not progressing, returning, not discovering, remembering, for all doors of ancient occult knowledge open the same way. Backward. Conclusion. Across this 4-hour descent into forbidden ancient knowledge, we have wandered through rituals older than writing, symbols older than myth, and chambers older than memory. Each lineage, storm readers, bone speakers, magician kings, unlit lamps, void carvers, face eclipsers, offered its own fragment of truth, but all pointed toward a single, unspoken principle: transformation begins not with acquisition, but with reversal. The ancients understood that wisdom is not a reward for moving forward, but a consequence of returning to silence, to origins, to fear, to breath, to ancestors, to emptiness. The door that opens backward is the final embodiment of this truth, a threshold reminding us that the deepest secrets are not ahead of us, but beneath and behind, waiting patiently in the dark. And like all who walked before us, we step across not to discover who we will become, but to remember who we have always been.